Stay connected to the world around you. KPBS brings you trusted news, compelling stories, and in-depth reporting every day. Wherever life takes you, KPBS is here, on the radio, online, and on the go. Discover more at kpbs.org.
Welcome in, San Diego. It's Jade Heinzman. Today we discuss the latest on a class action lawsuit against the county for alleged civil rights violations in county jails, challenging nearly every corner of operations. This is KPBS Midday Edition, connecting our communities through conversation. San Diego County jails have long been under scrutiny for alleged civil rights violations. The jail system had 19 deaths in 2022, which was a record high for San Diego County jails. A complaint filed that year has since expanded to a class action lawsuit challenging nearly every aspect of jail operations. That includes allegations of unconstitutional medical and mental health practices. Joining me to talk about the latest proceedings is Kelly Davis. She's a reporter on the watchdog team at the San Diego Union-Tribune. Kelly, always good to have you here.
Thank you, Jade. Good to be here.
So what can you tell me about this lawsuit, Dunsmore v. County of San Diego? I mean, how did it emerge and what has it grown into?
Yeah, so the lawsuit was first filed in February of 2022, and this was shortly after the California State Auditor released a report showing that San Diego County had the highest jail mortality rate among the state's 15 largest counties. So this lawsuit, it didn't start off class action. It began with 7 plaintiffs, all of whom alleged that they had suffered serious medical or mental health problems while in jail custody. And among those 7 was a man named Darrell Dunsmore, this is now referred to as the Dunsmore case. He'd actually filed a lawsuit on his own without an attorney 2 years prior in 2020. He had this debilitating form of arthritis. He relied on a wheelchair to move around. He needed a modified spoon to eat. And when he was booked into jail, deputies confiscated those items, decided he didn't need them, and when Mr. Dunsmore became distraught, he was placed in an isolation cell. He was unable to get to the toilet, forced to urinate and defecate on the cell floor. Without his modified spoon, his only option was to eat with his hands. So attorneys who were looking into San Diego jails found this lawsuit, saw that it had merits, took it on, and over time they gathered more and more cases of individuals who'd been in jail custody, highlighting deficiencies in medical care and mental health care. Those are kind of the 2 primary focuses, as well as accommodations for people with disabilities. In 2023, the case was granted class action status, so now it covers everyone who's been in San Diego jail, everyone who is currently in San Diego jail, and everyone who might end up there in the future. And just to be clear, this is not seeking monetary compensation for any of the plaintiffs. It's really focused on reforms.
Wow, those are heartbreaking and terrible allegations. The plaintiffs are alleging a wide range of civil rights violations, the main focus being on mental and medical care, as you mentioned. What are they arguing?
So the alleged deficiencies, it's every aspect of jail operations, from when the intake process when you're booked to how people are placed in housing, where they're placed in housing, and then the care that they receive when they're there. And so that the claim of the inadequacy of medical and mental health care, that's the most significant allegation. There are some other ones, but those are the 2 that really stand out. The Constitution requires that correctional facilities provide adequate care. So not like perfect health care, just adequate care. And there are entities, there's a state commission, there are national commissions that determine, there have been lawsuits that determine what adequate care should look like. So the plaintiffs representing the folks in custody, they brought in a bunch of experts. These experts toured the jails, reviewed tons of records, talked to people in custody, talked to staff, and determined that in so many cases the sheriff wasn't meeting these standards. The mental health expert, his name is Dr. Pablo Stewart, he probably dug the deepest of anyone. He submitted a 165-page report, and in large parts of this report, he goes case by case. He doesn't name these folks because, for medical privacy reasons, the names are redacted. But he goes case by case, all these records that he reviewed, and people with serious mental illness who weren't being seen by a psychiatrist, even though the jail has like a timeline of when someone is booked in a psychotic state. They need to be seen within a certain amount of time. People who had psychotropic medications that they were taking outside of jail, they get booked into jail. They don't get those medications, and they decompensate. So he just had case after case of where this had happened. And it really creates dangerous situations, not just for the person who could harm themselves, but they could harm other people. They could harm deputies, and so So that's I think that the mental health. I mean, that's such a big crisis right now. Mm-hmm. Well, has been for a while, but remains a crisis of folks with mental illness ending up in jail, and that really stood out to me as an area where the sheriff's department was falling short.
Well, last week there were two key motions, one from the county, one from the plaintiffs. What were those motions about?
So, the county filed a motion to, and it's kind of a regular thing that happens in the course of civil litigation, where they're trying to get the lawsuit essentially thrown out. So they're going to the judge and they're saying the plaintiffs have alleged, these 6-8 things, and we believe they haven't proved their case. And so the county was making that argument. And then the plaintiffs were arguing that the experts that the county brought in did not do a good job of proving that the county was doing fine, that the jails are doing fine. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have both sides trying to narrow down the case and what it'll look like when it goes to trial. It was really hard to tell how the judge might rule. He didn't issue a ruling on the day of the hearing. It could take weeks or months before he rules. But something he said at the end of the hearing is he asked both sides, how long do you think a trial will take? And it was 2 to 3 months was their estimates. And so I talked to folks after the hearing, and they're like, just because he asked that question, this shows that this case will move forward. So, we don't know exactly what it'll look like, if some of the claims will be narrowed, but it's more than likely to move forward to trial.
Yeah. Well, they really scrutinized one mental health care expert in particular, Dr. Joseph Penn. What can you tell me about him?
Yeah. So he was hired by the county to produce a report on mental health care in the jails. Attorneys for the plaintiffs scoured that report and found that he had copied and pasted parts of it from a report that he did in a lawsuit involving the Arizona prison system. So there were like specific references that would have fit the Arizona litigation, but not the San Diego litigation. And then he acknowledged under oath that he did not review. He was deposed by the plaintiffs. He acknowledged that he did not review the medical files of anyone who died by suicide or anyone whose death was tied to mental illness. And a big focus of this lawsuit is how do we prevent deaths in jails? And he didn't review any of those records. Another issue that came up in the Arizona case is that a federal judge found his work to be, quote unquote, deeply flawed. So while the county is saying, it's not unusual for experts to reuse material, that happens, I don't think the judge really bought it and said he will take that under consideration, whether or not he's going to dismiss Dr. Penn as an expert.
That sounds like a whole nother story.
Yes.
Are these people, these experts who come on like that, are they being paid by?
They are being, and that's important to know. Is they're being paid by whomever has hired them, and so they're gonna say what will bolster the case. But when you look at the quality of work they put in, the county's experts, like I said, you got a 165-page report, went to the jail, talked to so many people, and then you find with the county's experts, not the same level of work, not the same level of focus put into their experts. So I think that and it's very rare for a judge to throw out an expert. They usually say, like, let's just wait till the trial. During cross-examination, you could bring up all the problems with Dr. Penn's report. It's rare to see a judge just like strike an expert from a case. But I think the plaintiffs had some really good arguments to make.
Well, I mean, as far as the county's argument, what improvements do they say they've made in the jail so far?
So the sheriff's office has said, we've made so many improvements since that 2022 audit. We've made improvements since this lawsuit was filed. Actually, one component of the lawsuit has been settled over compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. The jail has actually agreed to make changes to its facilities, widen doors, make accommodations for folks in wheelchairs or who might have mobility issues, bring in sign language interpreters for people who are deaf. So yeah, they're saying, like, hey, we're working on improving. They've implemented new screening tools during intake to determine whether someone is on drugs. There are Narcan kiosks. Narcan's the medication that can reverse an opiate overdose. So there's Narcan. I don't know if kiosks is the right word, but Narcan is readily available throughout the jail. And so you've seen a significant decline in drug-related deaths. There's been a significant decline in suicides. So one argument that's being made by the county is like, hey, we're making improvements. Jails are better than they were in 2022. So how can you say, that these things that existed when you initially filed your lawsuit are still going on?
Well, this lawsuit has really exposed aspects of jail operations that weren't publicly available before. What are some examples of that?
So, I've been writing a lot about San Diego jails for more than a decade, and I thought I knew these jails in and out. But the information that the plaintiffs have uncovered, their experts have uncovered, like one thing I didn't know anything about was at the George Bailey Jail, which is the county's largest. It's their high security jail. There in one unit, there's this metal cage in the day room. The sheriff's department prefers to call it an enclosure. And this unit is almost entirely filled with folks with mental illness. And so they get an hour a day out of their cell, and they spend it in this cage. And the argument from the sheriffs is it's for their own safety. But I talked to a lot of experts who said that there are other ways to handle this, and putting people who are isolated further into isolation only exacerbates their issues. And then the jail also has like a rec yard. But if people want to go out there who have mental illness, they're also put into a cage. And experts also looked at these individual deaths that we might not know about because the family didn't file a lawsuit or this person doesn't have a family. And so we found a lot of cases where it might look like, based on the autopsy report or based on a review that the county's law enforcement review board did, that there were no policy violations. But then, when you dig deep into the medical records, which aren't part of the county law enforcement review board investigation, you do see that mistakes were made, that this person could have gotten better. It's usually, folks with mental illness, they could have gotten better care. So it's really been a window into things that the public might not otherwise have known about.
I also want to talk about someone you heard from, Jesse Gonzalez. He was in the same unit as Corey Dean, the sixth person to die in a San Diego jail this year. What did Jesse tell you?
Yeah, so Jesse had originally reached out to the lead attorney in this case. Their name is Gay Grunfeld. And he was in the cell next to Corey Dean, who died on July 13th. And he and three other men, they ended up providing sworn declarations about the days leading up to Mr. Dean's death. And I was able to talk to Jesse by the phone. I sent him an email, and 6 days later he received my email because you could reach out through a jail system. And I provided my phone number, and he gave me a call. He's housed in a part of the Vista jail with other. He has mental health challenges, and the folks in his unit also have a lot of mental health challenges. He told me about Mr. Dean's death, about how he was banging on the walls, crying out for help. He'd flooded his cell with dirty toilet water. He'd smeared feces all over himself, and he was ignored. Jesse said, Jesse and other men were saying, like, please get this guy some help. He's just constantly, yelling. And slowly over time, those cries grew quieter and quieter. And he was found dead in his cell. Jesse told me that the noise and the stench in this unit are overwhelming. He said, here's a quote, "All day, all night, someone is yelling. There's a smell of feces and urine. And it's difficult." And he spoke up even though he feared retaliation from deputies. He said, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And at least I can do one right thing in my life and seek justice for Corey. He felt that was very important. Yeah.
Well, and run it back for me again. What was the ultimate cause of Corey's death?
We don't know. It's and I asked Jesse about that, and he thinks, the conditions in Mr. Dean's cell were so unsanitary. It could have been an infection of some sort. There's the medical examiner is investigating, but no preliminary cause of death has been released. And Mr. Dean was 42 years old, so not elderly. No evidence of drug overdose. So we're just gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah. Well, how common is it that jail systems are sued? I mean, how does San Diego compare?
So actually I found out years and years ago, San Diego was sued over the jails being over capacity, and it was an ACLU lawsuit that required jails to reduce their population by a certain amount. And still to this day, the jails have to report their average daily population to make sure they're not exceeding it. And so they actually, the lawsuit was successful in dealing with overcrowding. But throughout the state, you do see these lawsuits filed, not always class action, but kind of large scale, addressing, trying to help everyone in the facility. And they'll cover the use of solitary confinement or overpopulation or how folks with disabilities are being treated. And the goal is to, again, not getting monetary compensation, but to force change and to put like a person in place who will make sure that any reforms that are made stick.
So what happens next with these motions is really in the judge's hands.
It's really in the judge's hands. Yeah.
What are we expecting?
It's hard to say. It was really impressive how this case is overwhelming for me. There have been so many documents filed and briefs and motions and expert testimony and declarations and such. The judge, Judge Battaglia, seemed really like he had done all his homework and he knew this case really well. So I'm thinking because of that, he might issue a ruling sooner rather than later. But it could be weeks. It could be fall before we know. But once he issues his ruling, then they'll start determining like the dates, trial dates, when those will start.
Yeah. Well, your reporting is always so impactful and eye-opening. Many thanks to you. I've been speaking with Kelly Davis. She's a reporter on the watchdog team at the San Diego Union-Tribune. Kelly, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
That's our show for today. I'm your host, Jade Hindman. Thanks for tuning in to Midday Edition. Be sure to have a great day on purpose, everyone.
Stay connected to the world around you. KPBS brings you trusted news, compelling stories, and in-depth reporting every day. Wherever life takes you, KPBS is here, on the radio, online, and on the go. Discover more at kpbs.org.